even knew what had hit him from behind. There's Foley. There's Junior Moore. Now they're all trying to get in to help LaRussa. Looking for somebody. There's Sparky Anderson talking to LaRussa. There's Billy Consolo. And now Tony LaRussa is talking to the plate umpire, Steve Palermo. I will be amazed if there isn't a fine and a suspension for this cowardly attack by Al Cowan. A fight is a fight, but not when the guy's got his back turned to you. Kuzner got hit in the chin twice. Now he's supposed to be the big macho of the White Sox, but he didn't learn to hold his hands up on those two. How did this a better fight than Leonard and Duran? They had to go 15 rounds. These guys have been going for about 15 minutes. I wonder if Cowens is still in the dugout. You know,
it's a beautiful day for baseball. Hello again, everybody. This is Harry Caray at Comiskey Park. Our guest on the pregame show, the manager of the Detroit Tigers, Sparky Anderson. Sparky, we not only had a great fight in Montreal last night, but a pretty good one here at Comiskey Park.
Yeah, we did, Harry. I liked your comments when you said it, Pearl Harbor.
Well, I tell you, I've been in fights. You've been in fights. Many of them, I guess. All of us have been. It's just so unusual to see a man attack a man from the rear with apparently no provocation of the moment.
Well, they asked me, Harry, what Detroit and Chicago, is this going to be bad, words in that? I said no, because this wasn't Detroit and Chicago. This was Texas and Kansas City last night. It had nothing to do with the Chicago White Sox. It had nothing to do with the Detroit Tigers.
Sparky, you talk much about the character and the discipline and the kind of upstanding young men that you want on your ball club. How do you reconcile with something like happened last night?
I think you have to look farther and deeper into it. I think the young man feels very strongly that he was purposely hit when Farmer was at Texas. I do not know. I know Ed well. Ed comes at home. I played in the golf tournaments with him, so I do not judge Ed Farmer. I certainly do not judge Al Cowens, but Al feels very strongly that he was hit intentionally. So if you feel this, it'll weigh on your mind, and I think us as individuals, it's none of our business what people have in their mind, but they have to get it off, and I think now it's over as far as Al's concerned, and I'm sure it's over as far as Ed's concerned.
You know, though, if there's a year for this to fester, and if you feel this strongly about a guy you think hitting you intentionally, aren't you going to do something about it? Aren't you going to challenge him rather than sneak up there when he's looking out towards shortstop?
Well, I think you have to look at it both ways. If you're up hitting, you're not suspecting that either, to get hit in the jaw. And I think that if you feel in your mind that it was intentional, then under those circumstances, I think then you'd have to think that was a sneak thing.
Do you think that there's anybody who plays Major League Baseball that honestly believes a pitcher is trying to hit him in the jaw?
I honestly believe there are people that have honestly hit people. Whether in that incident it was, I have no way of knowing. But I do know and have played with people that have intentionally cold-cocked people. Yeah.
Well, I find it hard to believe. I know the pitchers have thrown at guys. I know they've tried to get them away from the plate. I know they have hit them, but never with the idea of breaking their jaw or killing them.
Well, I don't think we ever think of that. But when we even talk about throwing at a man, you know, when you talk about throwing at a man, we can be varying from an inch to a half inch, and we're getting that close. If that ball takes off a little more than you expected, what do you think if it hits? It's going to break something.
We're talking with Sparky Anderson, the manager of the Tigers. We'll be back for more following this. Harry Caray back at the ballpark with our guest Sparky Anderson, manager of the Detroit Tigers. Sparky, on the pregame show on radio, I manager Tony LaRussa of the White Sox, and I asked him about the 7-day suspension, and he thought it was awfully weak, awfully light, and he thought that it might open the gates to a lot of further trouble if a stronger ruling wasn't made by the league president. What's your feeling about it?
My feeling is this, Harry, and I've been around a little longer than Tony, maybe not too much longer, but a little longer, and I've learned a long time ago the commissioner of baseball runs baseball, and then Lee McPhail runs American League, and Chubb Feeney runs the National League. I believe they're very confident or they wouldn't be there. I try to do this. I try to manage my club in that dugout. I don't try to run this league.
You know, I've seen a lot of fights, and you have too, on the baseball field. Usually they're just sort of polite little wrestling matches. But let me tell you something. There were some pretty good shots taken last night.
Yeah, they talked about that Durant and Sugar fight. I think that last night it was a pretty good, maybe a little better match.
You know, Tony La Russa's had a dislocated shoulder, and Tony has got a sharp fuse of the temper, and I think it's kind of fortunate maybe that his shoulder is bothering him, because he wasn't as prominent in that fight as he normally would be. But I noticed that he was trying to hold somebody off, and you were walking towards him. Now, I knew that you being the gentleman you are, and Tony being the gentleman that is, there's no way that you two guys were getting a fight. It looked to me like you might have said, hey, Tony, what are we doing out here?
Tony did a super job in that thing last night. When I got there, he was yelling, let's get them apart. And really, Tony did a great job. I think their coaches, Bobby Winkles and Lauren Dave, Alex Grandma's for us. I don't think the coaches have any business ever taking a shot. Now, one coach last night, I'll never mention it, took a shot. Now, that to me is totally uncalled for. That's the players. They can do all the wailing the way they want. No manager or coach should ever take a shot at a player.
You know, it's a funny thing, when you have a brawl like that, the stories of the blind shots. But I guess when you have a free-for-all, somebody's going to be hit blind.
Yeah, I never, Montreal and Philadelphia had a fight over Carlton, a throwing thing with Tim Foley, when he hit Foley and Mock, and they almost killed Mock in that fight.
Did you say anything to your team after the game, or during the interim, right after the scuffle? Was there anything that you said at all?
Right after the scuffle, I told them to shut their mouths and sit down, and we're going to leave the fans alone and stay back under, because the fans right at this moment are hometown fans. They're doing nothing wrong. All they're doing is getting a little excited. Leave them alone. One guy poured beer all over my head. The guy said, how can you take that? I said, look, that man didn't do nothing. He poured some beer on my head. He's just showing he's a White Sox fan. There ain't nothing wrong with that.
Sparky, a million thanks for, as always, a most interesting interview, and I appreciate you talking so frankly about the situation. Thanks for being our guest. Now, today, let's just have a lot of thrilling baseball and not so many fisticuffs.
Well, I just want the fans to know Ed Farmer's a fine person and Al Cowens a fine person.
Okay, thank you very much. Sparky Anderson has been our guest on the pregame show. It's a beautiful afternoon for baseball. We're going to be out in the center field bleachers. Jimmy Pearsall is already now with the starting lineups. Harry Caray down on the field, inviting him to stay with us for exciting Chicago White Sox baseball.